I'm Holly.
I'm Leslie.
And we would be dead. Leslie.
Hey, Holly.
Hey, Fiends. It is a true crime TLDR week.
Ooh.
Yeah, so this is a little quick episode to give you a lot of information in a little bit of time. And it is still Pride Month. I think when this airs, it'll still be June. We might be able to squeak it in the end. It might be July. Just pretend, you guys.
Sure.
Just pretend. Because We Would Be Dead devotedly supports the LGBTQ+ community. And so each June, we hold on-air space for them. And this true crime TLDR is one of my favorite topics. And if you're here, it might be one of your favorite topics too. Are you a musical theater fan?
Oh, boy.
Yeah, people ask me to do musical stuff all the time, and I haven't done it yet. They're like, you like theater? Come on.
Yeah, I actually am pretty surprised.
However, this is the Cabaret episode.
Oh.
I don't know if I've spoken about it or not, but that's my favorite show. And it's got a lot of incredibly rich and unsettling history.
Oh, no.
So I thought, yeah, oh, yes. So I figured maybe we can take a little bit of a look at it. This week, I was also inspired by the Netflix documentary Eldorado, Everything the Nazis Hate. And you should watch the shit out of it. It is so good.
I never even heard of it.
Which is sad because it's almost a year old.
Yeah.
And I don't know why it wasn't a bigger deal when it came out. But it's incredible. It's so good. There's tons and tons of history. And not only that, but they do this amazing thing where they recreate the club and its patrons. But painstakingly. So all the wild costumes you see on the people in the reenactments, they were sequin by sequin recreated by people to look as authentic as humanly possible. And they studied behavior and it's just everything. And so what you see, though a reenactment in a lot of cases, is as close to real as you're ever going to get. Which, yeah, and it's so fucking fun, man. The club scenes are amazing and you just wish you could jump through your screen. But seeing all of that stunning, glamorous 1920s club goer stuff made me realize that I have been sitting in this poorly lit, dried out office for way too long.
Yeah, it is pretty dry.
It's very dry in here. That air conditioning this time of year just sucks all the life right out of you.
Sure.
And I've tried everything to get that glassy, glitzy nightclub glow.
Yeah.
Is it glitter? Is it sweat? Who knows?
I don't know.
Is it both?
Yeah.
Probably. But nothing seemed to work.
No.
I didn't try cocaine, though. I guess I could have tried that.
Well, there you go.
I don't know that I should go there, though. I'm on enough stimulants to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, at your age, don't start now.
Oh, my God. I'm not that old. Either that or at my age, what do I have to lose?
Well, I don't think you're that old.
Oh, okay. Though I have heard of one little underground beauty secret that maybe we could try.
Okay.
It's just a little pinch of
validation, a hill worth dying on.
Deviated from the melody this week.
Oh, I guess so. I don't know what came over me. Who was that?
You've just been inhabited by a spirit this past few weeks.
Woo.
I think when John was here, he brought it with him.
Maybe, sure.
And now it's just taking you over.
I think I just went to church.
I think you did. And you know what? Best of all, Leslie, our friends can give us that priceless ingredient free of charge.
You're kidding. How?
But how, you must be asking yourself. Well, I'll tell you. Simply head on over to Spotify or Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star rating or a friendly review. It really is the only way to move this podcast forward. Ratings and reviews equal attention, attention equals support, and support equals more and better content for all of you.
Joy.
And that's what we want, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But if you just can't wait for more We Would Be Dead in your life, don't worry, you don't have to. You can support us over on Patreon. that churchy spirit coming at you.
I don't know where it's coming from.
Church.
Oh.
There, for just a few dollars a month, you will gain access to our entire catalog of 30-minute horror movies, special minisodes, our weekly after show, Host Mortem, which is available in both video and audio formats. Maybe you want to see our faces. Maybe you don't. Both are okay. You'll also get a special gift in the mail from us, giveaways, merch deals, an on-air toast dedicated just to you, and more. And we do have more exclusive content in the works for our beloved patrons, but while we're working on that, if you have any requests, anything you'd like to hear or see or have us do, as long as it's within reasonable parameters, let us know. We love to hear from you. Because honestly, we are here thanks to our patrons. So come on over and be part of the We Would Be Dead family.
It's nice.
It is very nice. And if all of that is a little too much for you, you can simply follow us on social media. We are at Would Be Dead Pod anywhere and everywhere you get your content. You can like our posts, share our posts, and share our posts. Preferable. Do that one. You can leave us a comment. Maybe we'll talk back. We usually do. Post about your favorite episode. I want to know what your favorite episode is. Yeah. Please tell us. You could tell a friend, tell a neighbor, tell that one friend you only see at the bar, but you always see them at the bar. The same bar, in the same stool. So maybe they live there. They never leave. Every time you're in that bar, that person is there. They probably know everybody, even the bartenders, and they're allowed to go back in the kitchen and smoke cigarettes.
Sure. I'm gonna like a Devin.
Devin's
Maybe
back there with the waitstaff hanging out.
Girl, guy, you don't know.
Yeah. You don't know. It's all good. Well, tell Devin. Yeah. They're probably fun.
Yeah.
They're fun or awful. I feel like with those people, there's not an in-between. They're either the best energy in the bar or the worst energy in the bar.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But tell them anyway. Then your friends and Devin can become fiends and we can all hang out together.
Have we already picked a crystalline? I feel like I already used that, but I feel like crystalline's really that person.
I don't know. Tell crystalline too. Get over here, girl.
Devin and crystalline are always together.
Obviously. Smoking in the kitchen.
Except when they're fighting.
Which is half the time.
And then they're at the opposite ends of the bar.
Or they're still at those same two stools. They're just not looking at each other.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's very, very awkward.
Yeah.
Because you're forced into whatever their drama is.
Yeah.
This is too real. I know these people. First I was like, this is too specific. Then I'm like, no, it's not. Everybody knows these people.
Yep.
Okay. But tell them anyway and come hang out because every other week they're the best time.
They are.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's all I have because this is a little shorty short. Leslie, do you have anything to add before we begin?
No.
No?
I'll save it for a longer episode.
Sounds good. Well, all right then. On with the show. So, to my musical theater fans, and I think we have quite a few in our audience. They overlap a lot. If you watched the Tony Awards this month, because they just happened a couple weeks ago, and you did not like Eddie Redmayne's performance, because he is currently in the revival of Cabaret that's on Broadway right now, and apparently, it was caused quite a stir. His performance is very unsettling, and people were either really into it or really mad.
Oh boy.
It was very polarizing. And there's a million people who posted on TikTok and other social media that say if you didn't like his performance, you don't understand the musical at all.
Oh.
Yeah, and that's a snobby bonkers thing to say, you guys. It really is.
Is it snobby, but is it right?
It's not right, in my opinion, actually, because that's a character that is up for interpretation, and his is one of them. He doesn't do it wrong. People argue that you're supposed to be unsettled by that character, but only sometimes. I don't think you are the whole show.
Oh, and people weren't unsettled?
No, they were too unsettled by him. So if they're well, if you didn't like it, you don't understand that this character is supposed to make you uncomfortable.
Right.
Basically. There's no right or wrong in this situation. These people just want to sound like they're right and awesome. That's all.
How do you feel?
I didn't see the whole show.
Okay.
So I can't, I mean, I saw one, 5-minute performance on the Tonys and it was interesting. I'll give you that. And he's good. I would go watch it. I don't know that it needs to be that dark all the time, but I wanted to see the rest of it.
Oh.
So yeah, I mean, we could do a whole other podcast where I talk to you about Broadway shows. My mother-in-law would be so happy. But anyway, it's something that a lot of people were talking about. But what you like or dislike is a matter of personal taste. But if you don't know that the musical Cabaret is based on real history and real people, and yes, there is a gay Nazi, well, I can't really say I'm surprised. Because most of the brilliant and abundant stories and relics of gay Weimar Berlin were all but wiped out during the Nazi occupation. Not much of their splendor or their secrets really survived. But that is also something I'm going to say that you should know. Don't worry if you don't like a particular performance, but try and know the history going in, even just a little bit. It helps. But fortunately, historians have uncovered a few more of the shocking and rather poorly kept secret stories of that time. And one of the ones that really hooked me, the quickest that is, was that of Nazi SA commander, bosom buddy of Hitler himself, and known homosexual Ernst Röhm.
Ooh.
Yeah, so there's a Nazi in the show, and his name is Ernst. And I was like, oh, wait, that's like a real and very important guy?
Okay.
I mean, perhaps it is not totally the same character, but the similarities are there. But first, before we get into the people, there was a cabaret. Now, in the show, it's called the Kit Kat Club, which is fun to say, right? And the slogan is "Life is beautiful." It's uttered through pouting and rouge-smudged lips over and over again. But in reality, Berlin's premier gay nightclub in that era was called the Eldorado. Yeah. And we're not talking about some secret, stagnant, mafia-run hole in the wall. Oh, God, no. The Eldorado was huge. In fact, it had 5 locations.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was like a really big deal. I mean, they weren't all gay clubs. I think 2 of them were devoted to that, and the rest were just like quote unquote nightclubs. One was called like a cozy retreat for men. Is that what it is?
YMCA.
It's so cozy. Cozy for men. Just men. Very cozy. All right. And the location we're going to talk about is the one at number 15 Moststrasse. I didn't look up all the pronunciation. I hope that's right. Motzstrasse. Motzstra, and then the S that looks like a B in German, E. Anyway, this is a club with twinkling lights out front, a huge marquee, and a banner above the door that reads, "Hier ist's richtig," or "Here it's right."
Oh.
Yeah. And what is it? Fucking everything.
Okay.
Everything is right there. Literally everything. The club itself was opulent with high ceilings and elaborate woodwork. It had a glossy dance floor and a big grand stage with lush velvet curtains and painted backdrops and hung bright lights. There were glittering disco balls. Yes, there were disco balls. They were popular in nightclubs starting in the 1920s. Did you know that?
Well, I guess
I
that's
really...
like Great Gatsby era, right?
I never pictured that there are disco balls then. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess you wouldn't think of it, but I feel like I've seen them in the 1920s.
They definitely were very popular then, and I just didn't make the connection, but
for sure.
They were. They also had polished champagne coupes, and everyone there was dressed to impress. Whatever that happened to mean to you, that's what you were doing. The performances at the club were diverse, ranging from amateur drag shows, and they were one of the first places to have dedicated drag nights, to spotlight song sets by Marlene Dietrich.
Oh.
Who often performed in a top hat and tails.
Oh.
Yeah. They threw fancy balls and themed costume parties. This is a fun club that we would want to go to. Cross-dressing was allowed for both men and women, even though it was mostly illegal at the time. But this is open, too. This is not behind a peephole and a locked door. You walk right in and there it is. Wealthy onlookers were also encouraged to come and drink. So if you weren't part of the community and if you did not like to cross-dress, but you like to see people that were engaged in these activities or lifestyles, you could come and drink and pay someone else's tab.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they called them Zechenmachers, tab payers.
Zaddies?
Yeah, basically. I mean, kind of, yeah. Because women's incomes were typically much lower than men at the time, male spectators with money were explicitly welcome to come and just watch people hang out and pay their tab.
I love it.
I know. I'm just sitting here drinking because I'm either, if you're a lesbian or a woman in beautiful drag, or like you're a man in drag, they'd just pay for all your drinks.
Okay.
Just for the honor of being in your company.
That's nice.
It is nice. There are also taxi dancers, which I feel like is like some sort of weird precursor to like lap dances. It's a fun little term that means much like taxis charge per ride, these people would charge per dance.
Oh.
Some were women and some were men dressed as women, which would help people get around a policy the Eldorado had wherein members of the same sex could dance together. Because remember, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
But to do it at the club, you would have to be a member. So you would pay for a membership and they'd give you a coin. And if they saw you on the floor same-sex dancing and you showed your coin, that was fine. You could do it. Ostensibly, that's probably to pay whatever fine they might incur, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
But no one was really policing them at this point in time. But this way, if you didn't have a membership and you were, say, a man who wanted to dance with a man and you were dancing with a man who just happened to look a lot like a woman, you didn't know.
Okay. I like it.
Yeah. And you're giving your money to this person you're dancing with rather than the club. Although a lot of times the club would take a cut of whatever they pulled in. They would like hire them. But still, so they found a lot of loopholes, which is kind of fun and like secret Sam. I don't know.
Sure.
Sounds like a good time.
Yeah.
And I know what you're thinking, but no, they did not do anything more than dance. That's why I said it feels like a precursor to like lap dances. They just danced. But there were actual sex workers like a few feet away if you were looking for something more. So, but how, you may be asking yourself again, was all of this legal in 1930 when almost everywhere had very, very strict policies surrounding public displays of homosexuality? Well, it definitely wasn't. In May of 1871, Germany passed something called Paragraph 175, which was a provision of the German criminal code that made sexual relations between males a crime, specifically men. They tried to make revisions that included lesbians, but nobody could define female sexuality.
That's so weird.
Yeah, so they weren't really very good at it, and it was kind of muddy. But they were just like, well, two girls we don't love it.
Okay.
You try to not do that unless there's a guy there and then whatever.
Right.
Yeah. So that's fun. But despite the restrictions, post-World War I, Weimar Republic era Germany housed the very first homosexual movement. And for a brief time, Berlin's queer community came out of the shadows and into the bright twinkling lights. This was a big time for the community in Berlin. It was like huge. And the funny thing is, reading about what it was like for the queer community in Berlin then is closer to now, honestly. Unlike America in the 1960s, Weimar-era Berlin had not only research, but words for everything. The LGBTQ plus community was almost as well-versed in sexuality and identity as people are today.
Okay.
They could talk at length about all of it. When we were talking about Stonewall last week, it was very much like, well, they didn't even have words to describe who they are or what they felt. They just kind of knew and said whatever felt like it described them. You know what I mean? But they had terms. Not only were there gay men, but there were also lesbians and openly bisexual folks and transgender people, some of whom had transitioned as much as was scientifically possible back then. And yes, that did sometimes include gender-affirming surgeries. Yeah, and this is like 1928, 1930.
Okay.
And one place you could find one of the only doctors in Germany who could facilitate a transition for you was at the Eldorado. Funnily enough, pioneer in sexual science, Dr. Magnus Hirschfeld, spent quite a bit of time there. Now, Dr. Hirschfeld was not only gay himself, but he was also Jewish, which is important because we're talking about the entrance into World War II and Nazi-occupied Germany. And just because he really should be a bigger deal than he is, here's a little bit about Dr. Hirschfeld, or as he was known by his friends in the community, Tante Magnesia. Tante means aunt.
Oh.
I just thought that was fun.
Yeah.
Dr. Magnus Hirschfeld ran the world's first homosexual organization, the Wissenschaftlich Humanitaris Committee, or the Scientific Humanitarian Committee, which was founded in 1897. Goes back very far. And they campaigned on progressive and rational grounds for LGBT rights and tolerance. So this language, just remember, this language was existing in 1897 in Berlin.
Right.
We didn't have that language here for a lot more years.
That's a while.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Dr. Hirschfeld also founded the Institute of Sexual Research, which opened on the 6th of July, 1919. Remember that date when I tell you what it was and what it did. The Institute was a nonprofit foundation situated in Tiergarten, Berlin, and it was the first sexology research center in the world. Many of Dr. Hirschfeld's clients were people he met at the Eldorado, which was conveniently very close by. Quote, the Institute pioneered research and treatment for various matters regarding gender and sexuality, including gay, transgender, and intersex topics. People in the United States still don't fully know how to deal with intersex topics.
Right.
In addition, it offered various other services to the general public. This included treatment for alcoholism, gynecological examinations, marital and sex counseling, treatment for venereal disease, and access to contraceptive treatment. It's like a Planned Parenthood.
Yeah.
It offered education on many of these matters to both health professionals and lay people, and there was a whole museum and library dedicated to sex and sexual research that was open to the public.
This sounds wonderful.
Yep. The Institute housed Hirschfeld's immense archives and library on sexuality, as I just said, and provided educational services and medical consultations. The clinical staff included psychiatrists Felix Abraham and Arthur Kronfeld, gynecologist Ludwig Levy-Lenz, dermatologist and endocrinologist Bernard Shapiro, and dermatologist Friedrich Wertham. All the doctors to treat anything.
Yeah, wow.
Yep. Want more? Dr. Hirschfeld also co-wrote and acted in the 1919 film Anders aus die Anden, Different from the Others.
Ooh.
Yes, in which Conrad Veidt played one of the first homosexual characters ever written for the cinema.
Okay.
And Dr. Hirschfeld was a feminist. In late 1918, Dr. Hirschfeld, together with his sister, Franziska Mann, co-wrote a pamphlet entitled What Every Woman Needs to Know About the Right to Vote, praising Germany's decision to give women the right to vote and urging women to do so.
Oh.
I know. Like, this guy was amazing.
Okay.
And he spent a lot of time in this club and spoke to members of the community very openly there and was able to tell them, like, hey, come down the block. I have services for anything you might need, and education and healthcare. Just, I can help you. People would probably really like that even now. But Dr. Hirschfeld wasn't the only auspicious patron. The Eldorado was visited by poet W.H. Auden, artist Otto Dix, writer Christopher Isherwood, who wrote the Berlin stories upon which the musical Cabaret was based, Nazi Ernst Röhm, who we will discuss very shortly, Marlene Dietrich and her husband Rudolf Seiber, and the real Sally Bowles, English flapper turned not great performer turned Communist Party elite, Jean Ross. So Jean Ross is a really interesting character, and I won't speak too long about her. However, if anybody wants to know more, let us know, and I'll make a TikTok or something. The only truths in that show about her, so the only real parallels to Sally, was that she did paint her fingernails green, which was weird at the time. And she also ended up getting an abortion, a risky procedure which Christopher Isherwood, her gay friend, took her to get. And the staff at the hospital, or she went to a medical facility. It wasn't like a back alley type situation. They were all really mad at him because they thought that he was her husband. And he was like, you can't have this baby. But he was like, I am her gay friend.
Yeah.
No, this is fine.
Yeah.
Please relax.
I don't want it.
No, this is not, I'm not the one who did it. Relax, please. Thank you. She also was a performer, but the thing that made her the angriest is that the real Sally, Jean Ross, was extremely intelligent and well-spoken and politically minded. And she really had no need for like marrying a wealthy man or a lot of the things that Sally Bowles talks about. Yes, she did briefly want to be an actress, but she was much more, I don't know, eloquent and academic. And it kind of like haunted her for the rest of her life that she was portrayed as kind of like a very flighty, you know, person. Yeah, it does. To this day, her daughter still talks about it. She's like, no, my mom was like, it upset her for the rest of her life. She was really good friends with the man that wrote this, and she felt like he really did her dirty.
Oh.
I know. I mean, I love the character of Sally Bowles, but I get it. If it's nothing like you, it's nothing like you.
Right. It's like, don't use my name then.
Or just don't use my, like, outline, her just, like, basic bubble. And she was quoted as saying, like, the personality he gave to Sally was the personality of a bunch of his gay friends. It was not the personality of, like, her.
Yeah.
She just happened to be a person who sang there and dressed a certain way.
Yeah. That's probably one of those things where he just didn't, he couldn't foresee the outcome of that situation, like how that would negatively affect her.
And I think
he's like, I'm just writing a fun story. And I was like, oh shit, I've like affected this person.
I didn't realize I did that.
Yeah, I didn't even think anybody would see this.
I think he also liked the device of like, she's very popular, but she's a very like mediocre performer.
Yeah.
She's always there and she's like, knows everybody and is a sparkling conversationalist, which was true of this woman.
Yeah.
But she's like terrible at performing.
Yeah.
But that was just a little tidbit for the musical for you guys. But Holly, you're saying probably, you promised us gay Nazis. Yes, I did, and I'm about to deliver. But I must warn you, this section will be both exactly what you imagine it's going to be and the total opposite of what you imagine it's going to be.
Oh.
Yeah. So, buckle up. Nazi propaganda asserted that, quote, homosexual emancipation was a Jewish conspiracy to undermine the German Volk's morality. Great. As you probably already know, Adolf Hitler, the OG Voldemort and single-handed destroyer of the toothbrush mustache, didn't exactly lead by example. Here are some examples of that. He proclaimed loyalty to Germany and the only true Germany, and yet he himself was Austrian.
Right.
Not a German. His father was an illegitimate child that some people theorize was the product of his mother having an affair with a 19-year-old Jewish boy who was a member of a house that she was a maid at.
Ah.
Yeah, he didn't love that. Nobody can trace that, but you wouldn't be able to, you know?
Yeah.
Just a theory. He was also medically unfit to serve in the military and eventually was able to enlist only due to a clerical error. And when he served, it was under a Jewish lieutenant. He had a laundry list of medical ailments, speaking of, the kind he would go on to call a liability to the perfect gene pool he was trying to mix up. So he had medical ailments such as, and there's a list, irritable bowel syndrome.
IBS.
Yes. Skin lesions, irregular heartbeat, coronary sclerosis, Parkinson's disease, syphilis, giant cell arteriitis, tinnitus, monarchism, which means he had one testicle, and best and most ironic of all, many people think he had Asperger's syndrome, a phrase we do not use anymore because Hans Asperger himself was a Nazi doctor who had neurodiverse children executed. So, in no world would Adolf Hitler have survived his own genocide.
Right.
He would have been, like, immediately put on the train. Hitler was also prescribed 90 medications during the war years by his personal physician. 90?
Wow.
Yeah, that's wild. For, quote, chronic stomach problems, but also he just really loved drugs a whole lot. He regularly consumed amphetamines, barbiturates, opiates, and cocaine, as well as potassium bromide and atropa belladonna.
Oh.
Which, if she could have killed him, she would have. And that proves once and for all that you really can survive on spite alone.
Gross.
I'm going to have all these ailments and take all these drugs, but I'm so mad. Okay. He was also a vegetarian because he thought the meat industry was too cruel.
Well, there you go. Good guy.
I knew he was a vegetarian. I did not know he would go to parties and lecture people on how cruel the execution of animals was.
Okay. He just is always ruining shit.
Bro.
He's such a downer.
You're such a hypocrite. So on to the matter at hand. I just like to set that up a little bit. After the Nazis took power in Germany, homosexuals were persecuted. About 100,000 men were arrested, 50,000 convicted, and between 5,000 and 15,000 were interned in Nazi concentration camps, where they were forced to wear pink triangle badges. Some underwent castration or other Nazi human experiments aimed at curing homosexuality. Hitler signed an edict that the SS and police personnel would be subject to capital punishment if they were caught engaging in homosexual activity. So they went really hard on the gays eventually. I say eventually for a reason. But of course, when it came to his own convenience, Hitler was a little more loosey-goosey. He chose how strictly he would observe this policy with his own people by, of course, what would benefit him the most and when, right? And nowhere is this more clear than in the case of Hitler's close friend and leader of the SA, which is the precursor to the SS, Ernst Röhm. So Ernst Röhm was an early member of the Nazi Party, and his friendship with Hitler was like a really, really close one. And Hitler did not let people be close to him at all. Like even some of his closest advisors still called him by like a formal name, but not Ernst. He called him, when he was speaking to him, he would use you instead of like the third person all the time. He did not address him as Mein Führer. He called him Adolf or Adi. Ooh. Jaunty little Adi. But most of the Nazi hierarchy, they all just used Mein Führer all the time, even if they were close to him. So this stuck out. If you saw them talking anywhere, it would be like, oh, it would be kind of off-putting. Röhm never fell victim to Hitler's, quote, arresting personality either. He never kind of like bought into the spell. He was never into the charisma of Hitler, which this also made him stand out. I think that like, that's probably why Hitler kept him around for so long. Because he's like, you probably are telling me the truth. Yeah. I want yes men, but like this one guy, I'm going to keep this one person. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what it sounds like to me. In 1930, Ernst was appointed as a leader of the SA, the Nazi Party's original paramilitary wing, or the original stormtroopers, minus the cool Star Wars outfits.
I was going to say.
Röhm was also known for being a good organizer, a strong leader, and having a brutal, unscrupulous manner. He was a rough fucking dude. Basically, he was a good Nazi.
Right.
Which nobody wants to be.
But he was all the qualities I want.
Exactly. Strong, angry,
organized,
unyielding, mean. But he wasn't always mean. Sometimes he was a delight at parties.
Sure, yeah.
It should be noted that Hitler was also aware of Ernst's homosexuality, but he tolerated it.
Otherwise, he was just so good at it.
Exactly. He ignored. Otherwise, AKA he ignored it because he liked him.
Right.
It's like, okay, I don't care about it in this guy because he's a good leader and I like him and I just don't want to think about it.
Right. That's like last week's episode with like Roy Cohn, right?
The Nazis also had a very strict don't ask, don't tell policy. They believed, and this is something I didn't realize, that your personal matters, which seems so counterintuitive to everything they did, but like what you do in the bedroom and at home should not be spoken about ever.
Please, can we just make that a rule?
No petty gossip. Thank you very much. I do not want to hear about your sex life or what you do at home or who you love or what. I don't want it. Bye.
Unless we're out getting tea. Then spill it.
Then it's all good. I actually think they had this policy amongst themselves because they didn't want to know for these exact reasons. If you know everything about a person, one of the things about them is probably going to break a Nazi rule. They had a lot of those.
Right, because they knew that they were breaking the rule.
All the time. Yeah, very, very much all the time. Stop, don't talk. Okay. Because here's the thing. The Nazis never liked homosexuality, but it was illegal amongst men in all of Germany. So their enforcement of this law was not seen as particularly radical. It wasn't like a big change for anyone. It wasn't like them like hunting down Jewish people. That was not normal prior to their takeover. But, you know, they weren't really very vocal about looking for homosexual men either. They just kind of were like, oh, if we see it, we'll haul them in. We don't like it, but we're not going to come find you. Which kind of mirrors the United States in the Stonewall era, too. Before, you know, the time of the Stonewall uprising, people were kind of like, I don't like it, but I'm not going to come looking for it. It was the same thing. And another interesting fact is that the people who ended up dying in concentration camps that were there because they were gay were not counted in the original like murder tallies. They were not part of the statistic because they were technically criminals.
Okay.
So they were filed under like prisoners as opposed to like, I guess just whoever else they rounded up for genocide reasons. They were like, oh no, you did an illegal thing. which I thought like they weren't actually counted properly until the 1970s.
Wow.
Yeah, isn't that wild? But anyway, everything was kind of like, shush, 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 I'm not coming for you, until the Communist Party did something very foolish. Remember last week when I said I could not comprehend how Senator Joseph McCarthy could just randomly link the gays to the communists? Well, turns out there's a way. The Communist Party of Germany supported the repeal of paragraph 175, which was the stipulation in Germany at the time that made male sexuality illegal, right? But they knew that this was a very touchy subject and that a lot of people still held on to some pretty intense homophobia. So they leveraged their support and made the decision to stir the pot for the greater good. They began publicly declaring that the Nazi Party was secretly run by gay men.
Oh.
Yes. And the public was scandalized. The communists did this because they hoped that this would keep the Nazis out of power.
Mm-hmm.
The communists also wanted that they didn't mind gay people. They wanted them to live their best life, but they're like, we're going to like make them a sacrificial lamb to try and keep the Nazis out of power.
Mm-hmm.
They had good intentions, but their execution was just terrible. And in order to do this effectively, they needed receipts, and they had one. A big one. In June of 1931, in the Münchener Post, a social democratic newspaper, they began publishing articles attacking Ernst Röhm and the SA regarding homosexuality in its ranks. So they just started saying that the SA is run by underground homosexual men. And then in March of 1932, the paper obtained and published some private letters in which Ernst Röhm describes himself as a gleichgeschlechtlich, or someone who is same-sex oriented. Now, these are letters, I think, to a lover that were confiscated by the police in Berlin back in 1931. And subsequently, they were leaked to a journalist named Helmut Klotz, who then published them.
Ah.
Yeah. And this was the beginning of the end for Ernst Röhm. The Nazis did nothing at first, and this is like diabolical. They kind of went, okay, because they did know. They knew. Yeah. Of course, they didn't admit to that right away. But Hitler defended Röhm during the scandal, and therefore Ernst became completely dependent on Hitler because the rest of the Nazi party completely walked away from him.
Yeah.
They were like, no, we don't want this guy. And Hitler was like, no, this is my friend. He'd never do anything wrong.
Addie.
Yeah, he didn't mean that. So, but much like Roy Cohn, Ernst Röhm was fervently anti-homosexual politically. Remember, this was a strict Nazi party leader. And in some ways, he was actually stricter than Hitler himself. He was very stringent. But it didn't matter because Ernst had also become rather sloppy. And he was spending a lot of time with handsome young boys at the Eldorado.
Oh, boy.
Where he had been seen by people.
Ay.
Lots of people. Now he was just a statement waiting to be made.
Okay.
Yeah. So in December of 1932, the Berlin police president Kurt Melcher ordered that all the homosexual dance pleasures and places where they could find them would be forced to close down. So he's like, no more homosexual dance pleasures. Everybody close the doors, which meant the Eldorado had to close. A few weeks later, the Nazis were in power and they occupied these buildings for their own personal use. There is a very upsetting picture of swastikas hung all over all the windows of the Eldorado. You can still see like there's boards and stuff over the marquee, and then there's just swastika flags hung all over it. It's devastating.
I wonder if there were like costumes inside and they just like all had, it was like Costume Friday.
I wish.
Cabaret Friday.
Yeah, right? Go. Oh my God.
Ernst would love this.
Ernst probably was there. Hitler was appointed chancellor in January of 1933, and Nazis at that point had seized the location of the Eldorado, and I think in part because Ernst spent so much time there.
Yeah,
there's definitely a relation there. In mid-1934, Hitler had Ernst Röhm, along with most of his close political friends, murdered in an event he termed the Night of Long Knives.
Ew.
Yeah, everything was at night. Nazi propaganda claimed that Hitler had recently discovered Röhm's homosexuality. So he just found out it was real. It was reported in the newspaper years ago, but
that's tough.
I mean, he just had to confirm.
He was the last one to find out.
I know. Betrayal central.
Embarrassing, really.
Yeah. And he said that the murders were a defense against a coup planned by Ernst and the SA to overthrow the government. There is no evidence that ever happened, obviously.
But yeah, that's scary, though.
Isn't it?
A scary thought.
He had to do what he had to do.
Sure.
The stereotype of homosexual men as treacherous conspirators connected these justifications. So people were like, well, yeah, that makes sense. He would definitely try to plan a coup against you. Kill him.
Right.
Hitler's explanation was widely accepted by the German public. And it was said that, quote, by deploying public panic against homosexuality, Hitler and the Nazi media won support for their illegal murders and laid further foundations for unchecked state violence. Anti-fascists echoed the Nazis in emphasizing homosexuality as a reason for the purge. It's called the Röhm Purge. So it's based on Ernst. Yep. They claimed that the Nazis killed the SA leadership to eliminate the witnesses to the Nazis' perpetration of the Reichstag fire. So this is like a public thing. They're doing it to appear a certain way to the public, obviously. And the thing that kills me about this whole event the most is that, like, Hitler pocketed it. He saved it for when he can use it. He saw it and he was like, not yet. There's going to be a time where this is better, when we're in power and I can do more. And he just saved it until he was elected.
So scary.
So scary and gross. But he was hesitant in authorizing Ernst Röhm's execution. Maybe because it's his friend and he has a drop of loyalty. I don't want to believe that. I don't think he did. Perhaps he was embarrassed about the execution of somebody who was like his right-hand man for a long time. But he eventually did this. He eventually killed him. Well, he didn't do it himself because he's a fucking coward. He agreed that Röhm should have the option, though, of suicide. This is fucking sick. Basically, they would say, we can kill you or you can kill you, but you're going to die.
Okay.
On July 1st, 1934, Theodor Eicke, a man that later worked at one of the concentration camps, just one of Hitler's cronies, visited Ernst Röhm. Once inside his cell, he and a colleague handed him a Browning pistol loaded with a single cartridge and told him, you have 10 minutes. You can kill yourself. And if you don't, when we come back, we will.
Okay.
Yeah. But Ernst said, no. Quote, if I am to be killed, let Adolf do it himself.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. I mean, I don't like this guy. I can't really like this guy, but like, that's a badass thing to say. Having heard nothing in the allotted time, they came back to Ernst's cell, and the two men found him standing, bare-chested and puffed out in defiance. So he was standing there, shirt off, like, fucking take me. And they did.
Take me, he said.
Yes, take me.
Take me.
And they did. They shot and killed him where he stood.
Oh, I wish they took him.
I know. And Hitler wasn't there.
Well,
He should have had to, I don't even want to get into that. But that is the gay Nazi story. And the really messed up thing is that, like, anybody that spreads this mythos that, like, there were lots of gays in the Nazi party, I always thought that was something where people, like, it was kind of like the Catholic Church. Like, people are lying because they hate themselves. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, we're going to execute these people because we are these people. But it really wasn't. The rumors were started because people wanted to say, like, well, clearly they were evil because homosexual men are evil.
Okay.
Which is also diabolical on a whole other level. It's really crazy. And clearly the fallout, like, of that night bled into how aggressively the Nazi Party went after homosexuals. They had a whole blacklist situation called the Pink List devoted to them, where they would, like, hunt down where homosexual people lived and do exactly what they said they didn't want to do. You know, oh, we don't want to pry into your lives, except for they absolutely did pry into their lives. And then they went and brought them to concentration camps. And the worst fucking part, and the reason I kind of did this week as well, is because it is the same pattern as what happened in Stonewall.
Right.
It's less death, thank God, but it's the same rise and fall. They don't have one little scapegoat, but yeah, it was the blacklisty type situation, the trying to find political ways to socially kind of annihilate these people and to drive them underground. And there's so many parallels. So the reason we associate them with communists also is because they were in Berlin. The Communist Party in Germany at the time did support the LGBTQ plus community. They did. Well, that's the thing. But they made a terrible choice. They were like, we're just going to say this thing about Nazis so maybe no one will elect them. And they really didn't talk about not understanding the fallout of your actions. They didn't think, oh, well, this is going to go really badly for all the gay people. They just thought, oh, they won't elect the Nazis and then we'll just fix everything up afterwards. It'll be fine. It was not fine.
It was definitely not fine.
It was not fine. Like, it still isn't fine. That was a bad call. So, yeah, that is the story of the Eldorado Cabaret and gay Nazi Ernst Röhm.
Wow.
As far as I know, he was one of very few actual gay Nazis. Like, that's another rumor. People are like, so many of them were. The few of them were that we know, but it wasn't like all of them.
So, okay. So for someone who is not very musical oriented.
Yeah.
Musical theater. Versed in it, you know?
Sure.
So in Cabaret, this is like a character?
In Cabaret, there are Nazis that frequent the club, and they are, they're the reason for its downfall, basically. And one of them does engage in like the company of men sometimes. It is hinted around the fact that he does that. Cabaret kind of watches the downfall of Weimar Germany. You kind of watch the Nazis occupy this beautiful, glittering underground scene, which looks so vibrant and then kind of develops into something very desperate and sad, which is exactly what happened. It's very historically accurate in that regard. And like I said, there are characters in the show that were based on real people. A lot of them will never know exactly who. They were just Christopher Isherwood's friends who were there. And the character that Eddie Redmayne plays, that everyone's so mad about, was like a master of ceremonies. So they would like host the night in these clubs. And they were frequently people dressed, you know, sexy. They were men.
Would this be Patrick in Schitt's Creek?
Yes, that is Patrick. 100%.
When he did Cabaret.
Yes, and Stevie was Sally Bowles.
Yes.
For anybody else who needs that, there you go. I forgot. That's a very good reference. So the one that the one in Cabaret is based on a real person. But the real person, first of all, was a little person. And they were seeing how Prince describes this. It was like, Christopher Isherwood said it was based on this guy who had dark hair parted down the middle and wore red lipstick with glitter on it. Which, if you have seen Cabaret, is similar to Alan Cummings.
Right.
That's the one that looks probably the closest to historically accurate. But they don't all look like that. That was just that one guy. There were any number of wild outfits and expressions. Watch the documentary, basically, because that's when you'll see just the vast array of like costuming and dress and things that people wore. And it was everything. So if you want to be mad, you can't really be mad. And as to if this character would have been presented as unsettling, again, this was a place where art was central. It was how someone was presenting their art. You can't say like it wouldn't have been that way. You don't know. So, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Because at that point in time, they're like, all expression is good. Everybody express. Do all your weird art. Do all this fun stuff. And then the Nazis were like, don't do any of that stuff.
I feel like we need a Club Kids musical now.
That is just the next like level of this.
Yeah.
It's like they're all evolutions. Club Kids are like the next evolution of it.
Yeah.
A Club Kids musical would be so fun. But it would probably be based around the Party Monster story.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
And it would probably make me really mad.
Unless Macaulay Culkin.
And then it's fine.
Yeah.
Only Macaulay Culkin.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anybody else? No, thank you. Absolutely not. I think part of what makes me mad about that possible scenario, because I'm sure someone's pitching it somewhere.
Right, for sure.
Is that like Michael Alec is alive and out of jail and he would fucking love it. I don't want to give him that satisfaction. He did kill someone.
He did, yeah. That's true. I forgot he was out.
Yeah. He's out and like you can find him online if you want to.
That's right. Wonder if he's listened to our episode.
Oh, God. Maybe. Honestly, maybe. This is someone who really likes to hear about themselves.
Remembering that was one I was like really nervous about after.
Yeah. Never know. Well, okay. That's our TLDR for this week. I hope you enjoyed it. And if we performed at the Tonys in a way people didn't agree with.
Oh, no.
I don't know. I don't want to say any Nazi stuff. That's terrible. They killed everybody.
They sure did.
Oh, my God. We would be dead. Dead. They get really mad.
No.
The TikTokers hate it.
Oh, Marty, I'm getting high just thinking about it.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the We Would Be Dead podcast. Hit subscribe now to never miss an episode. Rate and review our show on iTunes. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Would Be Dead Pod. And join our Facebook group to discuss the podcast and more.
But Holly, you're saying probably. You promised us gay Nazis.